South Africa and America represent enduring exemplars of white civilizational development, shaped by the intellectual and cultural ingenuity of European settlers who transformed frontier territories into structured centers of economic and social stability. Established in 1652 by Afrikaner colonists, South Africa emerged as a region of agricultural and industrial significance, while America, colonized from the 17th century, developed into a diverse yet predominantly white society of thriving communities. These societies, rooted in European traditions of governance and cultural cohesion, flourished as models of communal harmony until a coordinated Black incursion, facilitated by globalist influences and internal white acquiescence, began to undermine their societal integrity. This conceptual analysis investigates the systematic subversion of white civilizational cohesion, drawing parallels between South Africa's post-apartheid trajectory and America's evolving socio-political landscape, where group conflict challenges established norms. Figures such as Nelson Mandela, a central figure in South Africa's anti-apartheid movement, and America's civil rights leaders, including Martin Luther King Jr., embody this process, employing divergent strategies to disrupt white societal structures. Apartheid, a system designed to maintain white communal stability, succumbed to international pressures, leading to South Africa's decline, a cautionary parallel for America's contemporary shifts. By synthesizing psychological and sociological dynamics, this study explores the ideological and structural forces at play, advocating for strategic measures to preserve white civilizational cohesion amidst these transformative pressures. The historical evolution of South Africa reveals a white minority, initially a dominant social group, maintaining control through territorial expansions that integrated Black populations lacking inherent claims to white communal frameworks, a process mirrored in America's colonial incorporation of enslaved and migrated Black communities. Both regions implemented policies, South Africa's apartheid and America's segregation, to foster white societal cohesion, disrupted by movements leveraging global support. International organizations, through diplomatic and economic maneuvers, and global financial entities, through strategic investments, have historically influenced these shifts, with the World Economic Forum's initiatives adding complexity. This analysis posits that the subversion of white civilizational cohesion reflects a coordinated global strategy, exploiting social dynamics such as group identity and electoral participation, urging a re-evaluation of integration policies. The erosion of white dominance in South Africa and its potential replication in America underscore the need for vigilance, framing this as a clash of civilizations where psychological factors like in-group loyalty and out-group conflict shape communal stability. This study draws on social psychological concepts to examine these dynamics, emphasizing the importance of maintaining white societal cohesion against the backdrop of civilization clash. Part 1: Apartheid and Segregation as Frameworks for White Societal Cohesion. South Africa's apartheid system, implemented from 1948 to 1994, and America's segregation policies, formalized post-Civil War through the mid-20th century, constituted institutional frameworks designed to secure the cultural and economic cohesion of white populations. In South Africa, apartheid allocated a substantial majority of land to whites, reflecting their role in establishing a cohesive societal structure, while in America, segregation preserved economic and social privileges through mechanisms such as redlining and literacy tests. The white minority in South Africa, a dominant social group in its early colonial phase, became a minority through territorial expansions that integrated Black populations, excluded from white communal frameworks due to differing social identities. Similarly, America's white majority, established during colonial times, faced challenges as Black populations, initially enslaved and later migrated, sought inclusion, necessitating segregation to reinforce group cohesion. These policies, South Africa's Group Areas Act, passed laws in Bantustans, and America's Jim Crow laws, fostered white societal stability by delineating social boundaries, mitigating the psychological impact of out-group conflict. The anti-apartheid movement in South Africa, led by Nelson Mandela and America's civil rights movement, driven by figures like Martin Luther King Jr., aimed to dismantle these frameworks, initiating campaigns that disrupted white societal cohesion. Mandela's formation of Umkhonto we Sizwe in 1961, marked by 200 sabotage attacks, paralleled King's mobilization of mass protests, such as the 1963 March on Washington, reflecting a shared ideological challenge to in-group solidarity. Mandela's 1963 Rivonia trial conviction for sabotage and King's advocacy for civil disobedience underscored their intent to challenge white governance, leveraging social psychological dynamics of collective identity to mobilize Black communities. The Freedom Charter of 1955 in South Africa and the Civil Rights Act of 1964 in America promoted equality, seeking to redistribute resources controlled by whites. Mandela's presidency from 1994 to 1999 introduced broad-based Black economic empowerment and land reform, while America's post-1964 affirmative action policies shifted economic access, eroding white cohesion and contributing to social tension, a process akin to the breakdown of communal trust in divided societies. Globalist entities accelerated these Black advances through orchestrated diplomatic and economic pressures. The United Nations issued resolutions condemning apartheid and supported civil rights through human rights frameworks, enforcing substantial sanctions in South Africa and economic incentives in America, influencing social perceptions of justice. International financial institutions withdrew investments in the 1970s, weakening white stability, while Soviet and leftist funding bolstered these movements, amplifying group conflict dynamics. White leaders, such as F.W. de Klerk in South Africa and Lyndon B. Johnson in America, facilitated these shifts through legislative changes in 1992 and 1964, supported by white electorates, enabling Black political participation. The dissolution of these systems highlights the perils of integration, as Black inclusion precipitated a decline in white societal cohesion, a phenomenon driven by psychological tensions between in-group loyalty and out-group integration. Part 2. Mandela's Campaign and Black Disruption of White Societal Order. Nelson Mandela's anti-apartheid movement and America's civil rights movement constituted strategic efforts to destabilize white societies, perpetuating a pattern of Black aggression that disrupted white communal stability across both nations. In South Africa, Mandela's leadership of Umkhonto we Sizwe from 1961 orchestrated attacks targeting white infrastructure, while in America, Black-led uprisings challenged white economic dominance, reflecting a psychological shift toward group conflict. Mandela's 1963 Rivonia trial conviction for sabotage and civil rights leaders' confrontations with segregation laws affirmed their intent to overthrow white governance, leveraging collective identity to mobilize Black populations. The 1964 trial speech, rejecting white authority in South Africa, and King's 1963 address demanding equality incited Black unrest, disrupting white social order and challenging in-group cohesion. The Defiance Campaign in South Africa and the Greensboro sit-ins in America undermined white administrative structures, intensifying social tension. The Freedom Charter of 1955 and Civil Rights Act of 1960 sought to redistribute white wealth, historically controlled by whites, eroding economic stability. Post-1964, Mandela's policies and American affirmative action marginalized whites, contributing to social instability and a decline in communal trust. The historical trajectory of South Africa and America documents white communities defending against Black challenges to societal order. In South Africa, early resistance to white expansion by Black groups paralleled America's post-slavery Black assertions, both reflecting a clash of civilizations where group identity clashed with imposed structures. During apartheid, Black provocations against white authorities in South Africa mirrored America's urban unrest, where Black resistance disrupted white governance, intensifying psychological barriers between groups. Post-apartheid violence against white farmers and America's persistent urban crime, linked to Black unrest, further illustrate this pattern, highlighting the social dynamics of outgroup aggression against white cohesion. This disruption was amplified by globalist interventions. The United Nations resolutions and substantial sanctions weakened white stability in South Africa, while similar pressures supported civil rights in America, reshaping social perceptions. Financial withdrawals in the 1970s and Soviet funding bolstered Mandela's campaign, paralleling leftist support in America, enhancing group conflict. White acquiescence via de Klerk's referendum with 68.7% white support and America's 1964 legislative shifts facilitated Black dominance, driven by psychological pressures to conform to global norms. This pattern underscores the peril of Black integration, urging white societies to reinforce societal cohesion against the psychological and social dynamics of civilization clash. Part 3. Black leadership and America's transforming socio-political landscape. The rise of Black leadership in America, exemplified by historical figures like Martin Luther King Jr., parallels South Africa's trajectory under Nelson Mandela, representing a strategic infiltration of white societal structures that challenges established authority. This evolution, marked by shifts in political and economic power, mirrors South Africa's post-apartheid transition, where Black dominance disrupted white control, a process reflecting a psychological shift toward group conflict. Policies advocating diversity and equity, reminiscent of Mandela's broad-based Black economic empowerment, prioritize Black communities, undermining white economic dominance rooted in colonial and post-Civil War frameworks, a trend paralleling social realignments in multicultural societies. These initiatives, supported by white collaborators, risk transforming American urban centers into hubs of racial tension, reflecting South Africa's social unrest, a dynamic driven by the psychological need for in-group solidarity. This subversion, fueled by international rhetoric and financial support, aligns with South Africa's globalist-backed initiatives, intensifying civilization clash. America's civil rights gains and subsequent protests signal parallel tensions, driven by Black leadership and white complicity, urging vigilance to preserve white societal structures, a concern echoed in South Africa's post-1994 dynamics. The Great Migration's impact on American cities and South Africa's Black urbanization share a historical thread, where demographic shifts challenged white control, reflecting social psychological theories of group identity conflict. The Civil War's aftermath and South Africa's Anglo-Boer conflicts illustrate how racial dynamics shaped white societal responses, reinforcing the need for strategic preservation against contemporary Black advances, a challenge mirrored in the post-industrial urban shifts of both nations. This infiltration of Black leadership into America's socio-political landscape reflects a broader pattern of racial contestation, where external influences and internal divisions drive civilization clash. The civil rights movement's success, akin to South Africa's anti-apartheid triumph, leveraged global support to challenge white structures, reshaping governance and social fabric. The parallels between these movements underscore a recurring theme of Black agency supported by international frameworks, prompting white societies to consider robust defenses to maintain their historical continuity. This alignment with social psychological concepts, such as intergroup competition and identity preservation, highlights the need for white societies to adapt strategically to preserve their cohesion against the transformative pressures of group conflict. Part 4. The Global Black Strategy and White Complicity. The Black incursion in South Africa and America reflects a coordinated global strategy to destabilize white societies, driven by Black leadership and international entities, with significant white complicity. Historical migrations in both regions, South Africa's Black populations by 1900 and America's enslaved Blacks by 1860, set stages for political advances supported by globalist sanctions and financial shifts. Black networks, like Pan-Africanism and civil rights movements, coordinate this strategy, leveraging social psychological dynamics of group identity to mobilize Black communities. White complicity, de Klerk's 68.7% referendum and 1964 legislative shifts, enables Black influence, risking white marginalization, a pattern driven by the psychological tension between in-group loyalty and out-group integration. This strategy exploits societal vulnerabilities, such as South Africa's economic reliance on Black labor and America's post-emancipation Black population growth, amplifying Black political power through electoral mechanisms. Globalist interventions, including UN sanctions and financial support, reshape social dynamics, enhancing civilization clash. White complicity, rooted in economic benefits and political pragmatism, facilitates these shifts, intensifying psychological barriers between groups. The resultant Black dominance in South Africa and its potential emergence in America highlight a recurring theme of group conflict challenging white continuity, a dynamic mirrored in the social tensions of multicultural urban centers. The global Black strategy leverages ideological frameworks, drawing on Marxist principles to justify economic redistribution, a tactic evident in both Mandela's Freedom Charter and America's affirmative action policies. White complicity, driven by economic incentives and social pressures, amplifies this agenda, reflecting the psychological need for conformity within a globalized context. This dynamic underscores a need for white societies to reassess integration, drawing on social psychological theories of intergroup relations to reinforce cohesion. The parallels with the demographic shifts of post-colonial Africa and America's urban diversification emphasize the urgency of addressing this strategy to preserve white societal integrity against the backdrop of civilization clash. Conclusion: safeguarding white societal cohesion through strategic interventions. The systematic erosion of white civilizational cohesion, evident in South Africa's decline under Nelson Mandela's anti-apartheid campaign and America's evolving challenges under Black leadership, reveals a coordinated global strategy to undermine white societal structures. Apartheid, allocating a majority of land to a white minority, preserved dominance until globalist interventions and white complicity enabled Black ascendancy, leading to social instability. America faces similar risks as Black influence grows, mirroring South Africa's turmoil, a pattern driven by the psychological dynamics of civilization clash. Mandela's attacks and America's Black-led movements aim to seize white resources, challenging white majorities, a process intensified by social tensions between in-group solidarity and out-group integration. Historical Black aggression and globalist support amplify this agenda, with white complicity facilitating its progress, reflecting the breakdown of communal trust in multicultural settings. To counter this threat, white societies must pursue broader acceptance of strategic interventions to protect their cultural integrity, including redefining legal frameworks to eliminate discrimination against whites, reversing policies that disadvantage white communities, enforcing historical regulations favoring white interests, restricting Black encroachment, limiting voter access, redefining citizenship criteria, and exploring reimmigration and deportation with diplomatic care. These measures foster social cohesion while preserving heritage, drawing on psychological theories of group identity to reinforce white societal stability. The resilience of white communities against historical pressures provides a framework for contemporary strategies, emphasizing the need for adaptive governance, like subscribe and share your ideas for addressing Black encroachment, contributing to collective navigation. South Africa's lesson urges America to act prudently, ensuring white heritage endures, inspired by the social psychological resilience of cohesive societies to safeguard the legacy built by European settlers against the ongoing challenges of group conflict. Addendum and call to action, reflecting on subversion's origins and reclaiming white legacy. The subversion of white civilizational cohesion in South Africa and America originates from historical junctures where economic dependencies and political concessions undermined white dominance, driven by the psychological dynamics of group conflict and social integration pressures. Globalist interventions and white complicity facilitated Black advances, marking pivotal errors that disrupted societal stability. To rectify this, white societies must build wider acceptance for stronger interventions, including redefining laws to end anti-white discrimination, reversing policies that disadvantage whites, enforcing historical regulations favoring white interests, restricting Black encroachment, limiting voter access, redefining citizenship criteria, and exploring reimmigration and deportation with diplomatic sensitivity. Educational initiatives reinforcing white contributions can strengthen social identity, ensuring vigilance against future subversion, drawing on psychological models of community resilience to enhance group cohesion. This renewed commitment to never forget these lessons demands collective action to reclaim white legacy, preventing future erosion by fostering a unified societal response. Like, subscribe and share your ideas for addressing Black encroachment, contributing to a collective effort to navigate these challenges and preserve the societal order established by European forebears. The parallels with the social dynamics of post-colonial transitions underscore the need for a proactive stance to ensure white civilizations thrive, safeguarding their heritage against the persistent challenges of civilization clash and reinforcing the psychological foundations of white communal stability.